Let's take this story about Joe Rogan's passive comment and turn it into a major news cycle event, I suppose, because that seems to be what everyone does. But I want to talk about censorship. I want to talk about what's happening with big media, with YouTube, with CNN, and I do think it's worth launching off with this. So here's the story from Daily Mail. Joe Rogan threatens to quit his $200 million Spotify deal if he has to walk on eggshells and mind my P's and Q's following N-word and vaccine misinformation controversies. They say on the Joe Rogan Experience, guest and MMA fighter Josh Barrett, 44, said he was worried he'd be judged for every little thing. Quote, I will quit if it gets to a point that I can't do it anymore, where I have to do it in some sort of weird way where I walk on eggshells, Rogan replied. He's been under fire in recent months, this we understand, and now he's basically come out and made this statement. Joe also came out and talked about Chris Rock getting slapped in the face, because I think as a comedian, everyone's like, yo, that was not cool to smack Chris Rock, but we'll get into that stuff later. I want to point out first and foremost, as I said, is this just a passive comment? You know, he's sitting there, he's doing his show, and he's like, I'd quit if it got to that point. Because I just want to mention, hasn't it got to that point? How many episodes now have been taken down of the Joe Rogan Experience? Do we know?
Countless.
What's that website? Do you know what that website is?
I don't know what it is.
I'm going to look into it.
It's
though.
countless.
JREmissing.com.
I mean, it's
or something?
ridiculous.
Let me see if I can find it. Is it JREmissing.com?
Yeah, gremissing.com.
Hey,
There you go. 113 episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast are missing from Spotify. And on February 4th, 2022, a whole bunch of episodes were taken down, including one with Kyle Kalinske, where so everyone said the reason they were taken down is because they're episodes where Joe said the N-word. Kyle said that wasn't true.
Right.
And he said in that episode, though, he was talking about Saudi Arabia, and that's what he thinks. So I just gotta, call it like it is, man. I think Joe's a good dude. I think he does tremendous good, but I'm also not convinced he would quit. I think that if it really did came down to it, Joe would not publicly say, hey, I'm being forced to do something. Where was Joe Rogan's statement on why Majid Nawaz's episode was withheld for 3 weeks? I think it was 3 weeks. Majid was lighting up the internet on this. Majid hosts, previously and recently hosted a huge show on the radio in London. What is it? What's LBC stand for?
It's not.
No,
London
it's not
Broadcasting
London.
Company.
It's
I don't
like
remember. British Channel or something.
No, it's not that. It was like Conversation, something like that. I don't know.
London's biggest conversation.
London
Something like
Broadcasting Company originally.
No, that's not what it stands for.
That's what this says from
It's a radio show. It means
Wikipedia.
something else. Because I said that to him, and I was like, what is it, like London Broadcasting Corporation? He laughed. He's like, no, it's like something biggest conversation. But anyway, Majid Nawaz is not some random nobody. So when he goes and records with Joe and talks about a whole bunch of really important stuff, and then the episode doesn't go live for almost a month, and we hear nothing from Joe, I got to be honest, as much as I think Joe is a good dude, and I think he does stand up for a lot of people in good ways, I also think that if it really came down to it, he would not tell us he's being censored. He'd pull the episodes, passively mention them, not really give some good answer, and then the reality is he'd likely apologize.
Well, that's my frustration a lot with, the totality of Hollywood and entertainment, because, for those who don't know, that was where I started. I directed Oscar-winning actors, actresses, some of the biggest music stars. And, being in that world, I always hear now that I'm in politics, people go, oh, was it really hard being like the lone conservative? And the truth is I was not the lone person on that side. The reality is there's a bunch of cowards.
I was going to say you're making conservatives sound like cowards, but you said it before me.
They're a bunch of cowards, and I've said it to their faces. And some of these people are the biggest stars in the industry, and they're just terrified of not having easy access to capital. It's not just access, it's easy access.
I could call out some people right now.
Yep.
Because I remember I was hanging out in LA, and there was a bunch of Trump supporters that were doing some event, and there was some celebrity they saw who they knew, and they walked up and they high five, fist bump, gave hugs. And then this individual just was like, no, nobody can know. It's like, I'll lose everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Naming names.
It's a big thing. And, that cowardice is going to cost us something at some point. And that's why I think, we've got to try to motivate these people to show that you can have success outside of this, because it does have a cultural impact. And then being able to see that, honestly, even on levels like this, that a show like this can be as successful as it is, I would hope would give some sort of inspiration to somebody like Rogan to say, you know what? And he's done this before he was with Spotify. So I wish it would just sort of encourage those people to say, have some courage. Go fight for something. Fight for free speech. Fight for these values you say you believe in. Because that episode's incredible, by the way. He went hard. Majid, how do you say his name? Majid. He went hard.
It was one of the most significant Rogan episodes ever, which is why I always want to cut Joe slack. He's got the biggest podcast in the world. he does tremendous good. He reaches so many people. And I know a ton of people who are like left-leaning normies who have learned a lot of truth and principle because they watch Joe.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to be honest, when I look at this, I can't come out here in good conscience and be like, look, I know Joe, I consider him a friend. And he's totally right. He'll stand up. I'm like, dude, everybody knows that episodes have been pulled. Everybody knows that episodes have been withheld or delayed. Everybody knows Joe's apologized for a variety of things. I think it would be dishonest for me to just be like, oh, yeah, he'll definitely. I don't think so, man.
You tell me if I'm wrong about this. I do feel like if you were in a similar situation, which I don't think you would be in the first place because I don't think you want to be owned by anybody, but if you were in that situation, you would absolutely not stand for it.
Like if in this respect, I have a different strategy on stuff like this. It would be an insane lie for me to say that if YouTube ever came to me with censorship demands, I would refuse. Well, of course not. Of course, there's been several circumstances where I've been like, I can't say a certain name on the show, so nobody say it, right? So we set up timcast.com to make sure that we could have our own space that was isolated and protected, that was fortified. Joe's in that space.
Yeah.
He's literally in his fortified space. He's got a secure contract. And if he's willing to withhold shows on with a secure contract, now that I'm like, I mean, in that circumstance,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.